Hello and welcome to a lesson on simple ratio and recipes. In this lesson we'll look at 4 examples of simple ratios and then we'll go on to look at 2 examples of recipes. To begin then, example 1. Jack and Kevin share 28 sweets in the ratio 4:3 respectively. How many sweets does each boy receive? I think it's worth a word about respectively. What does it mean in this context? All it means in a ratio question is that the 4 and the 3 are in the same order as the boys' names, Jack and Kevin. So Jack gets 4 shares and Kevin gets 3. Now then, 28 sweets. What does the 28 sweets represent? It represents all of the sweets. That's Jack's sweets and Kevin's. And that's the first thing we have to ask ourselves. The number we've been given, what does it represent? So it's the total number of sweets. Total sweets is equal to 28. Now what about the shares of sweets? The total shares is 4 shares for Jack plus 3 shares for Kevin, which is 7 shares altogether. So 28 sweets is equal to 7 shares. So we can find out what 1 share is. 1 share is 28 divided by 7. If 28 is 7 shares, to find 1 share we divide the 28 by 7. And that of course is 4. And that's what ratio questions are about, finding out what 1 share or 1 part actually is. Once we know what 1 part is, we can find out anything. So now that I know that 1 share is 4, Jack, how many does he get? Well, he gets 4 shares, so he gets 4 times 4, which is 16 sweets. And Kevin, well, he gets 3 shares, so he gets 3 lots of 4, which is 12 sweets. And as a check, if I add those up, the 16 and the 12, they should add up to 28, because all the sweets go to the 2 boys. And that concludes that question. Jack gets 16 sweets, Kevin gets 12. Let's move on now to example 2. Alan, Bill and Colin share £20 in the ratio 5:3 to 2 respectively. How much does each boy receive? Well, there's that word respectively again. It simply means that Alan gets 5 shares, Bill gets 3 and Colin gets 2. So the £20 represents all the shares. That's all the money they have. So the £20 is equal to 5 plus 3 plus 2 shares. We can call them shares or we can call them parts. So 5 plus 3 plus 2 is 10 shares. So this £20 is going to be split into 10 shares. So 1 share is equal to £20 divided by 10. And 20 divided by 10 is 2. So 1 share is £2. And now I can quite easily work out what each boy gets. Alan, he gets 5 shares, so he gets 5 lots of £2. So he gets £10. Bill, he gets 3 lots of a £2 share because he gets 3 shares. So he gets £6. And finally Colin, he gets 2 lots of £2. So he gets £4. And again we should find that the 10, the 6 and the 4 add up to the £20 that was being split between them. Move on now to another example. Brass is made from copper and zinc in the ratio 5:3. No word respectively this time, but it doesn't matter. We assume that the copper is 5 parts and the zinc is 3 parts. How much brass could be made using 40 grams of copper, and how much zinc would be needed? Well, this question is different to the other two because this 40 grams I'm told about is not the brass. It's not the whole amount of material that's there. This is 40 grams of copper, and we can see that copper represents 5 parts of the total. So copper is 5 parts. And we're told that we've got 40 grams of copper. So 40 grams is equal to 5 parts of the total. So to find 1 part, we simply divide the 40 grams by 5. And 40 divided by 5 is 8. So that means that 1 part of this material, of this brass, is 8 grams. Now, how many parts are there altogether? Well, if there are 5 parts of copper and 3 parts of zinc, altogether that makes 8 parts of brass. So the brass is equal to 8 parts, which is equal to 8, and each part is 8 grams, so that's 64 grams. So the amount of brass that could be made would be 64 grams. 40 grams of it's copper. How much of it is zinc? Well, the zinc we need is 3 parts. So that's the zinc is 3 multiplied by, and we found out that 1 part is 8 grams. So 3 times 8 grams, 24 grams. So if we start with 40 grams of copper, we can make 64 grams of brass, but to do it, we'll also need 24 grams of zinc. And you can see that the 24 grams of zinc plus the 40 grams of copper, when they mix together, will give us this 64 grams of brass. Final example of ratio questions. The ratio of males to females in a gym membership is 7:4. If there are 32 female members, how many male members are there? Well, we've got this number 32. What does it represent? 7 parts of the membership are male, 4 parts are female, so the membership altogether would be 11 parts in total, if we needed that information. What we're told is the amount of female members, so we can say 32 females is equal to how many parts of the membership? 4 parts. And again, all these questions are about finding out what 1 part is. So 1 part of the membership is 32 divided by 4, which is 8. So 1 part of the membership is 8 people, 8 females in this case. Now then, how many male members are there? Well, we're told that the male membership is 7 parts. So males are 7 parts of the membership. And 1 part of the membership is 8 people, so 7 times 8 is 56. So there are 56 male members of the gym. And that concludes our examples on simple ratio. Right, now we'll have a look at 2 examples of recipes. Quite a common exam question. Fruit pie ingredients to serve 4 people are as follows, and they're shown in the table. What ingredients are required for 6 people? Now I'm going to show you 2 ways to approach this. First of all, what we can do is work like we did for ratio and get the link of how much do you need for 1 person. So if this is what we need for 4 people, for 1 person, all we need to do is divide everything by 4. And then once we've done that, to find out what we need for 6 people, if I know what I need for 1 person, I just need to multiply everything by 6. So what we want to do here is multiply by 6, but divide by 4. Now, like any fraction, we can cancel that down. So I can cancel the top and bottom by 2, and instead of multiplying by 6 dividing by 4, I can multiply by 3 and divide by 2. That's just cancelling by 2 top and bottom. Now, to keep the numbers small, it's easier to do the division first and then the multiplication. So let me work along these lines. Let's have a look at plain flour. 80 divided by 2 is 40. And now I need to multiply that 40 by 3. So 40 times 3 is 120 grams. This could be on a calculator exam, or it might be on the non-calculator exam. But there's nothing to stop you just doing your arithmetic in the corner of the page. You don't have to do it all in your head. What about the ground almonds? 60 divided by 2 is equal to 30. And then I need to multiply that 30 by 3. And 3 lots of 30 is 90. And the units in grams again. Soft brown sugar, 90 divided by 2 is 45. And 45 multiplied by 3 is equal to 3 5s are 15, carry the 1, 3 4s are 12 and 1's 13, so that's 135 grams. 60 grams of butter, 60 divided by 2 is equal to 30, and then 30 multiplied by 3 is equal to 90. So 90 grams of butter, just like we had 90 grams of almonds. Finally, the pears, 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2, and 2 multiplied by 3 is 6, and that's 6 pears. So that gives us the ingredients that we want. 120 grams of plain flour, 90 grams of almonds, 135 grams of sugar, 90 grams of butter and 6 pears. How else might we have approached this question? Well, what we could do is look to see how that 6 relates to that 4 and say, well, 6 is just 4 and then an extra half of 4 added on. So I just need half as much again as what I've got here. So if I said, well, what's half of 80? 40. If I just add on the 40, 80 plus 40, I would have got 120 grams, which was the answer we needed. Half of 60 is 30. If I add that on, 60 plus another 30, that would have given me 90 grams. Half of 90 is 45. 90 plus 45 is 135 grams. 60 plus half of 60 is 60 plus 30, 90 grams. And half of 4 is 2, so I add on 2 more pairs. 4 plus 2, 6 pairs. And you can see I've got the same answers doing it that way. So that was about saying, how does this 6 relate to the 4? It was 1 lot of 4 and an extra half a lot of 4. We'll use that technique again in this final example. Here we've got a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, and we've got enough ingredients to make 10 cookies, and we're asked for what ingredients do we need to make 25 cookies. Well, let's do it the longer way to start with. For 1 cookie, it's always that link back to 1. 1 share, 1 part, in this case 1 cookie. For 1 cookie, I know what I need for 10, so I just need to divide by 10. And then if I want 25 cookies, I'll need to multiply that answer by 25. So what do I want to do? I want to multiply by 25 and divide by 10. And I can cancel that down to a simpler relationship. I can cancel by 5. 5 goes into 25 5 times, and 5 goes into 10 twice. So instead of multiplying by 25 and dividing by 10, I can multiply by 5 and divide by 2. Which one am I going to do first? I'm going to divide by 2 first to keep the numbers smaller. So let's see what we've got. Start with the flour. 100 divide by 2 is 50. And now I need to multiply that 50 by 5. And 5 lots of 50 is 250. And what are we dealing with? Grams. Next, sugar. 60 divide by 2 is 30. And then 30 multiplied by 5. 5 lots of 30 is 150. Again, you don't have to do it in your head. Either use a calculator if it's a calculator paper, or just do the arithmetic, write down the sums on the side of the page. 50 divided by 2 is 25. And 25 times 5, 4 25s is 100, 5 25s is 125. And again, they're in grams. 40 divided by 2 is 20. And 20 multiplied by 5 is 100. So 100 grams. And finally, the eggs. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 1 times 5 gives me 5. They're not grams this time, they're eggs. So there's the ingredients we need for 25 cookies. Now what about the other method? How does 25 relate to 10? Well, it's 2.5 lots of 10. So I need 2.5 lots of all these quantities. So I could say 2 lots of 100 is 200. And a half of 100 is another 50, so that would give me 250 grams. 2 lots of 60 is 120, plus a half of 60 is another 30, so that would give me 150 grams. 2 lots of 50 is 100, and a half of 50 would be another 25, so that would be 125 grams. 2 lots of 40 is 80, plus half of 40 is another 20, so that would give me 100 grams. And 2 lots of 2 is 4, plus a half of 2 is another 1, that would give me 5 eggs. And if you check across the line, you'll see we've got exactly the same answers doing it that way. The choice is yours. That brings us to the end of this lesson on simple ratio and recipes. You'll now find an exercise to practice the techniques we've been looking at.